Welcome to the Midnight Narrator, where the boundaries of life and death often blur, and the things that haunt us may not always be what they seem. Tonight's unsettling tale, The Clock's Toll, takes us into a chilling mystery surrounding Silas Thorne, a man condemned to death but unable to escape the grasp of an unseen force. What happens when death itself refuses to let go? And how far will one man go to repay a debt that seems to span beyond time? Ready to face the impossible? On a day that blurred into countless others, they first attempted to end the life of Silas Thorne. I knew from the start his case was unusual. He seemed almost eager for the end, refusing appeals, denying spiritual counsel. He simply wanted it to be over. In just over a year, his appointment with oblivion had arrived. Passing his cell was unsettling. He stood motionless in the shadows as if perpetually waiting. The cell's light fixtures invariably failed, a problem maintenance had long given up on. He seemed unfazed by the darkness. Only the faint gleam of his eyes was visible. Warden Price, a man of rigid order, silenced the usual taunts from guard Davies. Thorne elicited a strange reaction from Davies, a mix of fascination and disgust. He wanted Thorne to at least feign remorse or fear. Thorne displayed neither. He walked to the designated chamber with unwavering composure. After what Thorne had done, well, Davies had a daughter. It was personal. We witnessed the procedure. The warden, officials, a representative from the governing body, a medical observer, and the victims' families were present. Everything proceeded by the book. The only unsettling detail I noted was the lingering metallic odor that clung to my uniform afterward. The following morning, Thorne was back in his cell, those same eyes peering from the darkness. "Good morning," he greeted us in a quiet, raspy voice. I dropped my clipboard, stumbling back. You're supposed to be—" "I don't understand," he said, tilting his head. "You didn't come for me. You promised yesterday would be the end, but you never came. I waited." Price and I exchanged bewildered glances. If Thorne was alive, who had been subjected to the process the previous night? Price recoiled as he lifted the sheet in the observation room. "It's Davies," he choked. The sight was horrific. Davies lay there, his mouth agape, his eyes wide with an expression of pure terror. The incident was covered up as a tragic accident. Internally, it caused chaos. Price and I were dismissed, scapegoats in a scandal they couldn't acknowledge publicly. I'd looked him in the eyes the day of his sentencing and, in a moment of misplaced empathy, promised him it would be over quickly. A promise I was now desperately trying to fulfill. The sheer impossibility of it haunted me. How could so many witnesses mistake a guard for an inmate? Thorne had been in that chamber, I was certain. Months later, a citywide power fluctuation occurred. The next morning, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. "We understand you worked with Silas Thorne. We need to discuss an ongoing situation." "What is it?" I asked. "At 7 p.m. yesterday, we attempted the procedure again," the voice said, the initial professionalism replaced by palpable anxiety. It didn't work. I was reinstated. Officially, Silas Thorne's case was closed after the first attempt. Unofficially, they tried again 6 months later. This time, Thorne remained completely unresponsive during the process. Afterward, the technician who'd initiated the procedure collapsed, convulsing violently. Electrical surges erupted from the equipment. It was a disaster. A clandestine agency became involved, investigating anomalous events. They said Thorne would only speak to his former guards. Walking into that interview room felt like my own walk to a reckoning. Thorne stared at me, as if he'd been expecting me. I sat down, trying to control my trembling hands. "Thorne, Officer Vargas," he replied, his voice flat. "I thought you'd abandoned me." "No," I stammered. "We were reassigned. I'm here to ask you some questions." "Ask," he said. How did Davies and the technician die?" "I didn't," he said. "It did. It. The presence behind you." I refused to turn around. "Thorne, please be serious. I've always treated you fairly." "You believe death is a punishment," he said, a flicker of emotion in his voice. "It isn't. It's release. You grant it to others but deny it to me. With all your technology, surely you can find a way. My throat tightened. We're trying, I said, but you need to cooperate. Tell us what prevents the process from working. He leaned forward, almost imperceptibly. It won't let me go. Then, I felt a cold hand on my shoulder. Everything stopped. My breath caught in my throat. I felt a chill that went beyond physical cold. I saw the hand in my peripheral vision. Long, pale, and impossibly thin. I felt breath on my neck. I was paralyzed. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't think. I saw Thorne's eyes dark and deep like bottomless pools. Agents in dark suits burst into the room, ending the interview. They showed me the security footage. There was nothing behind me. On March 12, 2002, Thorne was scheduled for a third attempt, a method I never learned, at a remote facility. Price and I shared drinks in his new office, a somber celebration. He looked aged and weary. "Did I ever tell you why I chose this work, Vargas?" he asked. He recounted a past case, a brutal crime that had gone uninvestigated. It had driven him to seek justice. He'd joined the force, reopened the case, and seen the perpetrator brought to justice. "I believed in order," he said, his voice heavy. "But if Thorne can't be stopped, what order is there?" He looked at me, his eyes filled with despair. "If he doesn't die tonight, I'm resigning." Then, Price's face contorted in a silent scream. He clutched at his chest, his eyes bulging. He slumped forward, his body hitting the desk with a dull thud. There was no visible cause, no sign of violence, just the sudden, inexplicable death of a man in his prime. I ran from the office, finding my colleagues oblivious. The agency made it clear, if I didn't cooperate, I'd be blamed for Price's death. I was brought back to Thorne. His eyes were now completely black. I trembled as I sat before him. "Thorne," I stammered. "I have questions. How old are you?" "The clock ticks," he rasped, his voice a chorus of ancient whispers. "It never stops, it never forgets, and it never forgives. Why did you do what you did?" "To feel," he whispered. "Anything. Don't you feel remorse?" "Remorse?" he scoffed. "The walls remember, they whisper the names of those who have passed, they know what awaits." He stood, unrestrained. "You promised me release," he said. "You owe me." He lunged across the table, his grip impossibly strong. He screamed in my face, a cacophony of voices. I tried to push him away, but his grip tightened on my throat. Then, the cold hand returned to my shoulder. I was paralyzed with ancient fear. It threw me back, and I woke up in the infirmary. The security footage showed nothing. Thorne became catatonic, refusing to speak. The agency dismissed me. Years later, I learned of subsequent attempts, a firing squad, a lethal injection. Each attempt resulted in the death of someone connected to the process, not Thorne. I isolated myself, but the feeling of being hunted remained. I researched ancient lore, seeking answers. I think I know where they're keeping him. I have to repay the debt. The faces of the dead haunted my dreams. Billy, Kramer, Taft, my wife, my son, my nephew. Their eyes, wide with terror, accused me. I felt responsible. It was my duty to stop this, to repay the debt I felt I owed them. And Thorne. The night is moonless, the sky a vast expanse of black velvet studded with distant stars. The air is crisp and cold, biting at my exposed skin. I approach the facility under the cover of darkness, moving with a practiced stealth I never knew I possessed. I bypass the outer perimeter fence with ease, using a combination of lock-picking skills and sheer desperation. I navigate the treacherous terrain, avoiding the motion sensors and pressure plates I've meticulously mapped. I reach the main building, a concrete monolith that seems to absorb the darkness. Inside, I move through the dimly lit corridors, guided by my memory and the faint hum of machinery. I avoid the security cameras, sticking to the shadows, moving like a phantom. I reach the lower levels, the area designated for high security containment. The air here is thick with a palpable sense of dread. The silence is broken by a low, rhythmic thrumming that seems to emanate from the very walls. I follow the sound, deeper and deeper into the facility. I reach a heavy steel door, reinforced with multiple locks and security panels. This is it. This is where they're keeping him. I produce the tools I've prepared, a silver locket, forged under a new moon and consecrated with the ashes of a fallen angel's trumpet flower. I work quickly and silently, manipulating the locks, bypassing the security systems. The door swings open with a low groan. Inside, the room is dimly lit by a single flickering fluorescent bulb. In the center, Thorne sits in a simple metal chair, his eyes closed. He appears to be in a trance-like state. I approach him cautiously, my heart pounding in my chest. I can feel the oppressive presence that emanates from him, a cold, suffocating weight that presses down on me. I produce the final item from my preparations, the silver locket. I hold it out towards Thorne. As the locket comes into his field of perception, his eyes snap open. They are no longer black voids, but a normal human brown, filled with confusion and a flicker of recognition. "Who?" he whispers, his voice weak and hoarse. "It's over, Thorne," I say, my voice trembling. "It's time." I place the locket around his neck. As the metal touches his skin, a blinding flash of light erupts from the room. The air crackles with energy. The thrumming intensifies, reaching a deafening crescendo. Then, silence. The light fades. Thorne is gone. The chair is empty. The oppressive presence has vanished. I stand there for a moment, catching my breath, trying to comprehend what has just happened. I feel a sense of profound relief, mixed with a deep, unsettling emptiness. I turn to leave. But as I reach the door, I see something scrawled on the wall in what looks like dried blood. The clock has stopped. I leave the facility, stepping out into the cold night air. The sky is beginning to lighten, the first hints of dawn painting the horizon. I take a deep breath, the air filling my lungs, finally free of the metallic stench that has haunted me for so long. I don't know what happened to Thorne. I don't know where he went, or if he even exists anymore. All I know is that he's gone. And with him, the horror that has plagued me for years. I have repaid the debt. But the silence that now surrounds me is more profound than any I have ever known. It is the silence of a clock that has stopped ticking, the silence of a world where time itself has ceased to have meaning. And in that silence I hear a faint echo, a whisper carried on the wind. Thank you. And that's the end of the clock's toll. A promise made in the dark, a debt repaid. But at what cost? As we close this chapter, we're left to wonder, is death truly the end? Or is there something far more sinister that lies beyond the ticking of the clock? If tonight's story left you with more questions than answers, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for more tales that will keep you up at night. Until next time, remember, the clock never stops ticking, and sometimes it's the silence between the ticks that carries the greatest danger. This is the Midnight Narrator, and we'll be waiting, just beyond the silence.